Nancy Jo Kemper,
And
class.
what years were you here, Nancy Jo?
I entered in the fall of 1964.
You know what, I just need to move the cup.
Oh, so sorry.
No, that's okay, that's fine, yes.
Sorry about that. You want us
Can
to
I
start
move forward or not?
Yeah, let's start over.
Let's start over, okay.
Just for now.
What is your name,
Nancy Jo Kemper.
and what years were you here at YDS?
I began in the fall of 1964 and completed my Bachelor of Divinity. I still have that degree in 1967, but I stayed in New Haven until 1972. Actually, the end of 1972.
When you were looking at divinity schools, why did you pick YDS?
Well, I came from Transylvania College in central Kentucky and a little liberal arts college, and there were already about a dozen Transylvania people here. And there were 4 from my graduating class that arrived in the fall of 1964, and so we just added to the stream. I looked at Vanderbilt and Duke and Emory and Chicago and Union. But we had had a murder in my college campus, and I still was uneasy about being in certain kinds of large cities, and New Haven felt smaller, and with an existing community already here, it felt like joining family. On the other hand, I also thought that it was time for this little girl to get out of the South.
Yeah. What did you find most unexpected about YDS when you got here?
I think the general level of gentrification. At the time that I was a student, we had white tablecloths at dinner. The men wore coats and ties. The women wore dresses. And the men stood when we came in. I had never been at a place where the men would stand for the women and adjust our seats for us. And in general, that we were just here. I was just stunned that I was here.
What percentage of your class were women, or how many women do you think were
There
on
were
campus?
there were 17 in my class. The poster over there says 39 women, and I think that includes PhD students. I believe there were approximately 30 of us that lived on campus, either in the married student dorms, although there might have only been 1 or 2 married students. The rest of us were all single. And I have great fun telling my congregations that when I came to Yale, there were 300 men and 30 women, and I had a ball.
So you experienced this as a male-dominated environment?
Oh, yes, but it really didn't bother me. Being in a male-dominated environment did not really bother me, in part because I anticipated it would be so. At the time that I was thinking about seminary, clearly mostly a male profession. I had read Betty Friedan my senior year in college, and had very clearly come to a point of view that I could not base my life on becoming a wife and mother, and that I had always wanted to do something in church work. I did not know quite what it was going to be, but I wanted to get the best education I possibly could, and this looked like the place to get it.
Very good. Were there women role models, either faculty or staff here?
No, none. We had Portia Bowers, who directed and helped with field work at the time, but the women got the worst fieldwork assignments that were possible and available, and they were usually in Christian education and youth work. We were also not permitted to take the class called the Work of the Parish Minister. At the time, only men, and they were usually in, quote, student associate positions and got to preach and all of that. I never got to preach. And I had thought about going into religious journalism until I found out there was really only one decent position as a religious journalist in the United States, and that was with the New York Times. And there was no way I wanted to live in New York City, not to mention that there weren't a lot of positions. So my second and third years, I worked as the editorial assistant for James Dittus for the Journal for the Scientific Study of Religion, and for Randolph Crump Miller for the journal Religious Education. And got my fieldwork credits that way, and then I also taught Sunday school at Battelle Chapel. It was fun, but it meant I didn't have to drive off in the snowstorm. The first year I was here, Paige, it snowed every Saturday night after midnight once November hit, and I had to drive almost to Hartford in this old 10-year-old Pontiac up side roads to, I can't even remember the name of the little town now, to this American Baptist church, because there were no disciples churches to work with the youth group.
Was that your denomination, Disciples of?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that we had a disciples' house here at the time, and there were quite a number. There were over 50 Disciples of Christ students enrolled. We were the second largest denomination at the time, and now there are fewer than one or two, and we have the most denominational scholarships as a denomination, and they go unused.
Oh, did they ordain women at that time?
Yes, they've been ordaining
I
women
thought so.
for well over 100 years before I was ordained.
Actually, can you say that again?
They were ordaining women at that time?
Yes, they had been ordaining women for over 100 years, a little less than the United Church of Christ, the Congregational Church, but not much. So I had seen a few women ordained before I got to seminary.
Okay. Socially, what kind of challenges do you think you experienced based on being a woman here?
You know, the men who were here were great. They accepted us. I really did not ever feel that I was out of place. And they seemed to be glad that we were here and enjoy our company. And almost every woman had at least 15 really close male friends. And so we might be associated with one house or another. And we just had a ball. Had a lot of fun. I'd never had so many male friends in my life.
In what ways do you think your time here affected your ministry or your work in women's empowerment, gender equality? How did
It
that?
changed everything. If I'd gone to Vanderbilt, or if I'd gone to Lexington Theological Seminary, the Disciples of Christ Seminary in my hometown, I would never have done the things that I've gotten to do, been privileged to experience. I found I knew people all over the United States in many different denominations. It shaped me ecumenically. I arrived here never having said a creed. I did not even know what the historic creeds of the church said. I'd never said the prayer of general confession in my entire life. I learned church music. I learned so much stuff from all of our classmates who were from around the world. It was life-changing experience. Even though we came, as kind of this little cluster of students from this little college in Kentucky, the friendships expanded out from that. One of our classmates, by the way, is still here, never left, Bob Wilson, the Old Testament professor.
Yeah. I knew him, yeah.
Are you hearing the squeaking?
Yes.
I did for about a
My
minute.
my chair squeaked, I'm sorry.
Oh, is that your chair?
I bounced, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, it's not your fault.
It wasn't the equipment, it was.
I was wondering where that was coming from.
Nancy Jo, can you describe an incident or tell me a special memory you have or just something about your time here?
Well, I remember many snowstorms when we had great fun in the front quadrangle having snowball fights and playing. We used to call it the biggest playpen in the world. But I also remember when I got engaged after my second year, that engagement did not last, but I was very clearly told that only one of us could have a scholarship if we married before I finished and before he finished, and it would be him, not me. And this was another student who was on an intern year that year. And I was appalled, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, but fortunately before the semester was over, the engagement was off, and so that cleared that up. But it harkened back and brought to mind a lot of the Betty Friedan material around women's issues and a beginning awareness of the oppression of women that I had not been clearly cognizant of. I just was living in a bubble of some sort. But if I look back to the admissions interview, I came and I stayed with some of my upperclassmen women from Transylvania, was interviewed by Russell Becker, who proceeded to lecture me about women coming to YDS and taking the place of men, and that he began to dig into a romantic relationship that I'd had with a student in college and wanted to know, he was supposedly in pastoral counseling, more and more about this relationship, and that they could not admit me if I was going to come for just a year and then leave and get married. And what was he going to do? And was I going to continue? And was I going to complete my education without marrying? Was I coming here for a husband? No. And so it was almost like swearing on a stack of Bibles that I would not marry before I was done. He also told me about some research that Brown Barr had done, supposedly in 1959, that showed that fewer than 5% of the women who had previously graduated from YDS were gainfully employed using their degrees, so that justified the decision of the faculty to limit the admission of women to 10% of the entire student body. Mm-hmm. So there were approximately 30, I think, BD or MAR students when I was here, along with about 300 men. Mm-hmm. So that began to kind of raise my awareness more and more. And then I also found I was going to do an honors project, and Sidney Ahlstrom wanted me to do a study of Julia Ward Howe, and I felt, I want to do somebody important. He's picked out a woman for me, although now I want to know more about Julia Ward Howe. At any rate, I didn't do that particular honors program because he wasn't willing to do anybody else with me at the time. But I think he was right, that I should have become aware of that woman, and I had no awareness of it. So I'm really sorry I did not follow through with his advice in that matter.
Is there anything else you want to share with us?
Well, yes. I mean, later that year, that same after my second year, a lot of us were going down to New York City to be on game shows because they were filming TV game shows in New York City, Jeopardy in particular, and Password, a word-based game. I'm not too good with contemporary culture and never have been with pop culture, and so I was afraid to try Jeopardy. So I went down, and Kathy Turner also went down to New York City to try out for Password. And I thought surely Kathy would get on, and I wouldn't, but no, they picked me. I got on. I said I was from Kentucky, the land of bluegrass and beautiful horses and fast women, and that was the line that got me on television. At any rate, we earned enough money to earn, I did, a charter airplane ticket, and Kathy and I went to Europe that summer for 39 days, and we hitchhiked all over Europe together. Meanwhile, she'd gotten engaged just before we left, and we came home, and then she got married to Greg, and both of them eventually got their scholarships, but they were able to get their scholarship because that spring when she got engaged, she'd been told she would not be able to have a scholarship if they married, if they were both students. And I said, I'm tired of this. And she claims that we went to see Ray Wood because he was the bursar, and we might have gone there first, but I remember marching into Colin Williams and saying, this has got to stop. This is ridiculous. We are modern women, and we are going to use our education. And in fact, the two of us are probably the women with the longest history in ministry of anybody that's graduated from this institution. I have been a parish pastor for 52 years. She's been a hospital chaplain for 50 years, and they were going to take away her scholarship. And the dean looked at me, and I think it was because finally it was dawning on them that the Civil Rights Act included Title IX, and they were no longer going to be able to discriminate and put a cap on the number of women that were admitted to Yale Divinity School. And he said, you're absolutely right, and we will end that policy.
Good for you.
So Kathy claims that I won her scholarship back for her, but she says Ray Wood did it, and I think Dean Williams did it.
Okay, well, thank you, Nancy Jo.